What's up, everyone? Welcome to Locked On Lakers. Andy Kamenetsky and special guest Claire Delon. The Lakers are in a make-or-break stretch for the season. They managed to check one box, including getting Anthony Davis back. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Lakers your first listen every day, Monday through Friday. No matter where or how you get your podcast, it's always free, never behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to hang out with over 23,000 subscribers. It's an awesome community of Laker fans, really lively comment section, very respectful crew, nobody out to harass anyone. It's a lot of fun. So be a part of it. Want to let everyone know that today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Brian, my brother, not able to join us tonight. He will be back Wednesday, but very pleased to have in his place our friend Claire Delon. She is a big-time basketball Twitter presence. You can find her at Claire MPLS. She covers the NBA for The Guardian. She's also a musician, records and tours under the name Tiny Deaths. Before the show's over, we'll make sure to let her tell our audience about her songs, where to find them, etc. Claire, how are you?
I mean, I'm great. After that win, like that,
yes.
What was that, a 35-point win or something insane like that?
31 points.
I'll take it.
Absolutely. You are also, while you cover the league objectively, you are a partisan Laker fan at heart, and LeBron fan especially.
It's hard to explain to people that I am able to like compartmentalize as a journalist versus like on my days off. But I feel like living in Los Angeles, it's such a contagious energy. I've been here for almost 7 years. So it was impossible not to catch Lakers fever living here.
You know, it's funny actually you say that before we get into tonight's game and all the stuff that happened and the ramifications. When I moved to LA in 1990, I was not into basketball at all. Like, I grew up in St. Louis. St. Louis is not a basketball town. I did not play growing up. I had no real interest until moving to LA and getting sucked into, like you said, the energy of Lakers fandom and the passion around the city. Like, I started getting into them. They weren't even good. Like, it was a down period in between, you know, Magic's retirement and eventually bringing in Kobe and Shaq. This was not even like a fun time to root for them, but I just could not help but get caught up into how much the Lakers they're part of the city's fabric.
1000%. Yeah, totally.
Well, then you were pleased by tonight's 136-105 beatdown of the Atlanta Hawks, who they stink. They're
a hard watch. They're right up there right now with the Joel Embiid-less Sixers as like my least favorite teams to watch on League Pass.
Brian and I talked about on Monday heading into this stretch of 9 games that in a lot of ways could make or break the Lakers' quest to, at minimum, secure the 9 seed, if not try to actually get 7 or 8. And like hosting, you start tonight, you're hosting Atlanta. You got 3 days off before hosting, as you said, a very unpleasant Sixers team right now. Then you host the Pacers. Then you go on the road against the Bucks, the Grizzlies, Pacers again, Brooklyn, Toronto, the Wizards. And I said, like, they got to go at least 7-2. And all
1000%.
these sub 500 teams, you got to beat them all. And you may need some help along the way, which they got. The Warriors lost to the Knicks at home, so the Lakers back in the 9 seed. Like, it's no great accomplishment beating Atlanta, you know, particularly this version of Atlanta with no Trae Young. But, like, I think the importance of getting this win, especially for a Lakers team that has played down to the level of competition, it can't be overstated.
Exactly. No, and that was my fear coming into tonight, and that is what has been so both confounding and frustrating about this team this year is they have the capacity to beat the absolute best teams in the league on any given night, and they also have the capacity to lose to some of the worst teams you've ever seen. And it feels like so much of it is just energy and effort. They absolutely have enough talent in the building to get it done night after night. And regardless of the stakes, it feels like, regardless of, what's going on, they just seem like they just sometimes choose not to show up. And that's what's really frustrating. And it does tend to be against these teams that they're quote unquote supposed to beat.
It's funny the way you phrase that, Claire, like the idea of it being a choice, because while I don't always think that maybe they are as talented a group as I think everyone thought they might be heading into the season, or that you wish they can be on a game in, game out basis, there are times where it feels like this was a choice to play like crap tonight. And it helped, I think, probably to have, I mean, it helps to have Anthony Davis back, because it helps to have Anthony Davis back. He was able to,
so important.
Like, he was able to get back quickly from that corneal abrasion that he suffered in Saturday's loss to the Warriors. But I think it also helped just mentally for them to know we're not going to have to even figure out life without Anthony Davis. He's back. He absolutely dominated in this game. 22 points on 10 of 14 from the field, 15 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Only had to play 31 minutes. But I just think knowing that he's going to be there, it's like, okay, it's not one more thing that we got to figure out as we try to make the best out of the rest of the season.
Absolutely. And I think, to me, one of the only things that seems to shut people up who are, Anthony Davis doubters, detractors, what have you, is when he's not there. I mean, his absence is a cavernous hole on this team. He does so many intangibles for them. He really does everything for them. He does all the little things. He is their defense, really, and not just as far as like, his defensive assignments himself, but the tone setting on defense, calling out defensive, game plan assignments, reminding people where they're supposed to be on defense. So he's really the captain of the Lakers defense. And then on the other end of the floor, he's just so dominant. His presence is so intimidating. And he really is, in some ways, single-handedly responsible for why they're such a good matchup, or I guess for the other team, a bad matchup against some of the best teams in the Western Conference, teams like Oklahoma City. I mean, that's Anthony Davis's presence. Like, Oklahoma City doesn't struggle with the Lakers like they do if Anthony Davis is not on the floor. So I think when he's gone, it's one of those, like, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Like, people really are able to, it's staggering what this team looks like without him.
Well, and look, it's staggering what this team looks like when AD can't control a matchup. I mean, forget Jokic, because Jokic I think he's matchup proof. Like, I think he's the most matchup proof player in the league. But that he can't honestly beat this matchup against Domantas Sabonis, or at least play to a draw. That becomes a big reason that the Lakers have struggled against the Kings. Or if they lose to Phoenix, I imagine the biggest reason could be Jusuf Nurkic gives him problems with that physicality, more so than like Durant going off, or Beal going off, or Booker going off. I actually think it's AD being stymied that way. Like, he's that important to this team.
Yeah, the European centers really do seem to be his Achilles, as it were. But I mean, I would say, like, people whose last name ends in IC aside, he is just so dominant. And I think, I made a TikTok about this earlier this year because I just got so frustrated with the narrative around him. Like,
where can people find it?
All of my socials are on the same random handle that someone made for me 10 years ago. So Claire MPLS is where you can find it. But basically, I was just sort of breaking down his numbers this year, and just the fact that, like, the kind of street clothes, inconsistent, there's a lot of words people use to describe him that just haven't really been accurate for some time. And he's been, one of the highest minutes load players in the league this year. He's missed less than 5 games. He's been incredibly reliable, incredibly consistent, and also doing it on both ends of the floor, which I just don't think people who don't watch basketball night in, night out, or haven't played, or, especially at this level, understand, like, what's asked of this man on this team. I mean, like, to be in the conversation for defensive player of the year and also to be carrying like a lion's share of the offensive load of your team as well is just, it's kind of unheard of for most players, honestly.
I mean, I think also too, there's a statement made by AD tonight, just being available for this game. Like, I don't say that like I know what it takes to come back from a corneal abrasion, how quickly. I've
had one of those actually.
Really? How long did it sideline you?
I wore an eye patch for 2 weeks, but that was because I'm a contact lens wearer. I don't know if AD is, but you're not allowed to wear LASIK,
I believe.
Okay. So yeah,
not 100% sure.
It's a little more complicated when you like wear glasses or contacts, but if you wear contacts, you're not allowed to wear contacts until it fully heals. And it's really makes you really dizzy to wear only one contact. So that was why I was wearing an eye patch, mostly was to like equalize my vision. But yeah, it freaking hurts badly. And I totally understand why he couldn't play that night. I mean, I think if you've experienced it, like his eye, you could see his eye was swollen shut and people were still like, he should have toughed it out. Just like, what? There's no pleasing some people, you know?
All right. Coming up next, DAngelo Russell is making his place in Lakers history. And you've had an interesting perspective as somebody observing DAngelo Russell. So we're going to talk about that next. Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Stitch Fix. And with Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. They do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update with on-trend favorites for your wardrobe this season. I just give my stylist from Stitch Fix the size, the style, budget preferences, order boxes when I want and how I want because there's no subscription required. And they send 5 just for me pieces plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. You keep what you want, send the rest back, and shipping, returns, exchanges, always free. Very important, always free. And it's not even necessary because my stylist always sends perfect pieces and the fit's always on point. It's like they have style ESP. They make it really easy. Shopping can be a hassle, but Stitch Fix saves you the time and the effort. Plus, they're going to make you look and feel good in the process. It's style that makes you feel great. So get started at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon, stitchfix.com/lockedon. Okay, so DAngelo Russell entered this game, I believe it was 7 3-pointers behind. Yeah, 7 3-pointers behind Nick Van Exel to set the all-time single-season record for 3-pointers made. D'Lo was, first of all, he was terrific tonight. He had 27 points on 8 of 14 from the field, 6 of 10 from behind the arc, 5 of 5 at the line. 10 assists against just 1 turnover. The last 2 games, he has a combined 23 assists against 1 turnover. Like he's
insane.
He's been Golden State, they lost, but D'Lo played very well, and it was a game he needed to have because let's just say the quotes that he had to Dave McMenamin did not age well in the Sacramento game.
I've really kind of done a 180 on him this year.
That's what I thought. I've noticed, regardless of when you've paid the most attention to him, just because we follow each other on Twitter, you've always had very strong opinions of DAngelo Russell.
I just have strong opinions in general.
That is true. That is true.
I think he's been freaking phenomenal this year. I think it would be hard for any player to play well under the circumstances of the first few months of the season in which Darvin Ham used, I don't even know how many starting lineups. It was all over the freaking place, and nobody's starting spot besides Anthony Davis and LeBron James was safe. It was, you know, everybody who's starting now has spent significant amounts of time on the bench besides LJ and AD. But I think D'Lo, you know, he like hashtag I took that personally getting benched. And I think it was in some ways like the best thing that could have happened to him. Maybe it was like, you know, galaxy brain by Darvin Ham. I don't think so. I think he just was wrong and then got corrected. But let's just give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he had a master plan all along that Austin and D'Lo moving to the bench would unlock the starters that we all knew they could be, or maybe this is the starting lineup from their, you know, playoff run last year and they should have just been playing all season. I would err it that way. But he's been awesome. He's been awesome, not just as a scorer, which we all know, like when D'Lo gets hot, it's there are very few players in the league that look like that when they get hot. He's just like, he can't miss sometimes.
I've said this before. He is, when D'Lo is on, he's a top 5 player in the league in terms of pure swag.
Yeah.
Like his swag is off the charts when he's on. Like
he's
he
so
drips charisma.
He's so freaking fun. And he's such a star in the sense of like, he's a rock star, you know, like he milks it. He like, you know, talks to the crowd. He, you know, he has the little like freeze thing. Like he does all these little like swaggy things, to your point. But also something that I'm really impressed with D'Lo this year is just the maturity, the basketball IQ. Like last year, I think, you know, something that was really frustrating about D'Lo was just there was a lot of really stupid mistakes, a lot of really dumb turnovers. And I feel like he's reined those in a lot this year.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like his ball movement and facilitation have improved mightily from last year, even though I think he always had that in his game. I just don't think he really cared to do it very much. Like when he had the ball, he just wanted it to go up. And I don't know, I'm kind of fascinated by like NBA players becoming fathers and how it changes their game. But he, you know, he had a kid between, you know, when he arrived at the Lakers this most recent time and now. And I think to me, I mean, I am, this is maybe a projection or conjecture or whatever, but I do think you can see the maturity shift in him. And to me, when you're that talented of a scorer and your maturity level starts to meet your scoring talent, like that's when you become the best player you can be. And I think we're watching that happen right now, which is really cool.
I think there's definitely something to the fatherhood thing, just because it puts a lot in perspective in terms of just how you want to be seen, like whether you're talking about immediately to your son or just in general. But I also think too, and I mean, it's funny because the way he talked about some of the stuff in the Denver series and being, you know, benched for Dennis Schroder. If nothing else, we learned from that article, D'Lo does not like Dennis Schroder. Like that was a feud going on that I had no idea about, but clearly
oil and water, maybe kind of a vibe is what I got from that.
I'll be honest, they're both and you know, I covered D'Lo during his first stint with the Lakers, and I was around him more than I've been this stint. Like I've always had a soft spot for the guy. I've always found him really interesting. I find his personality pretty fascinating, but he's had a reputation for rubbing some teammates the wrong way. Dennis Schroder's had a long reputation for doing the same thing. So it's not, I'm not going to say it was predictable that they might have a thing, but it maybe isn't shocking either. But like D'Lo has acknowledged that he had a pretty bad series last year against Denver. Yeah. I think he is correct that he became kind of the scapegoat in the way that it overshadowed. He was not the only guy who had a bad series.
Pretty much everyone had a bad series against Denver.
His was just the highest profile struggle. And I think in a lot of ways it was confirmation bias for the way people feel about him. But it felt like that series in a lot of ways was a come to Jesus moment for him. Like, okay, who do I want to be as a player? Like, do I want to be the guy that just keeps getting dealt all over the league, that, you know, is good enough to be in the NBA, but never good enough to have a team really want me? And, you know, like, do I want to hit a next level? Because, you know, professionally and to whatever degree he expected a free agent market financially, that series was painful for him.
Yeah. And his, you know, I'm sure he watched his value precipitously tank over the course of that playoff. So, you know, coming up on a contract, that can't have felt good. I think the other factor about, I think this could apply to most of the team, to be honest, whether it's D'Lo or Rui, who are playing so well right now. I really think the chatter around the trade deadline for basically the entire season until the trade deadline passed really affected these guys. I mean, people forget, like, these are human beings. They have feelings. They have very delicate egos. They are, you know, when you're a professional athlete at this level, when you're at the highest level of what you do, in order to get to that level, you have to have been the absolute best guy in every situation you were in up until you were in the NBA. So in elementary school, in middle school, in high school, you were like the star and everybody just lauded you, like, attention on you. And then, you know, they're not conditioned necessarily for like the level of criticism that they're getting when they get to this level. And I think they're, you know, especially when your name is mentioned in trade rumors and stuff, like that stuff hurts and it's really destabilizing. And I think once the trade deadline passed and the Lakers didn't make any moves, which shocked me. I think it surprised a lot of people. I at least, at the very least, thought D'Lo would move because his contract was signed and the money was set to be tradable. I mean, that was the intention all along.
D'Lo said as much.
D'Lo said as much, and the Lakers haven't been particularly opaque about that either. So I think once it was like, oh no, you're here, like this is where you are, and whether that's Austin, whether that's Rui, whether that's D'Lo, I think that really unlocked just a level of ease from all of their games. And I think you're watching them, they all look so much more comfortable now. They're settling into their roles. And honestly, even, you know, I've probably been more critical of Darvin Ham than anybody, but even for Darvin, I think like knowing who was going to be in the locker room enabled him to sort of like settle into some rotations. And do I wish those rotations had just been settled into earlier? Like, yes, absolutely, 1000%. But I think everyone benefited from some stability and some like concrete, like this is who's here. This is what we have to work with this year.
I want to get into a overarching media conversation about the Lakers that you wanted to have. So we will talk about all of that coming up next. Locked On Lakers is brought to you by LinkedIn. And when you're hiring for your small business, you just want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn, it's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. It's so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So think about that. Finding who you need the first time within a day, and it gives you even more time to focus on the big picture goals for 2024. LinkedIn even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process that much easier and quicker. 2.5 small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring for a reason. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Real quick before the final point that I had about what you were saying about the trade deadline and all these different players prompted a thought for me, but I wanted to make sure everyone knows. Woj tweeted out, quote, ESPN sources with @McTen, Dave McMenamin, Los Angeles Lakers forward Christian Wood will undergo an arthroscopic procedure on his left knee and is expected to be sidelined for several weeks. The Lakers' final regular season game is April 14th. Darvin said that before the game that both Vando and Gabe Vincent were progressing as expected. I think Reddish as well, like didn't give it any real details, but he had been a little bit more opaque about Christian Wood. And this, I think, would explain why the Lakers have definitely been missing Wood, if nothing else, for the size options. Like right now, it's basically Anthony Davis, Jackson Hayes, and that's it. So see how they navigate that moving forward, but it sounds like they're not going to have Christian Wood for a while. All right. The floor is yours, Claire DeLune. There is a Lakers conversation that you want to have about, I guess, the media conversation about the Lakers.
Yeah. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive that the media, I'm complaining about the media, but I heard on a couple different podcasts. We're not a
monolith, you know.
Yeah, no, we're not. We contain multitudes, clearly. But I heard on a couple different, I'm not going to name names, but wink nod. I heard on a couple different podcasts in the last few weeks, people talking about, well, if LeBron and AD it was within the context of All NBA.
Right.
And if they deserve to be All NBA, like, why are the Lakers a 500 team? Why are they struggling to even make the play in if these guys are so good and they've been playing so well? And I just feel like that, and I've even heard Lakers fans, sort of be like, I want more from these guys somehow, even though obviously, like, if you objectively look at what they're doing, it's quite a lot, at least on the stat sheet. And in the case of these two particular players, I think there's so much that they do that isn't on the stat sheet. But I just think to me, it's like such a ridiculous conversation. And I don't know how to stop it. I guess it's for SEO purposes, like dunking on LeBron is always going to be a good business. Ask Skip Bayless. But I just, first of all, to me, if you watch this team, and I'm sure, you know, your listeners are smart and watched a lot of Lakers, so they probably don't need me to tell them that, like, the coaching and supporting personnel issues that the team has had this year, the fact that they're even 500 to me is a miracle, above 500, considering what they're up against. And I know that sounds crazy to say when LeBron and AD have been so healthy, but like, basketball's a team sport. It's not tennis. It's not golf, you know? So like, some of the rotation choices, the like reticence to call timeouts, like Darvin Ham's shortcomings in general, I think there's been, to me, I would say probably I would put half their losses on like just lack of effort and or matchup woes, and half on just poor coaching decisions.
Well, I mean,
think that's
I can tell you're going to have a lot of agreement in the comment section about Darvin's decisions, rotations, lineups, all that stuff. You are not fighting this battle alone. What I think, and this is something I've talked about before, what I think is tricky in evaluating really LeBron. I mean, AD's been fantastic this season. I mean, he's had some dips since the All-Star break, which I think have in a lot of ways been timed to matchups. And maybe he is feeling a bit of fatigue from playing this many games this hard on both sides of the ball. But I think it is pretty difficult to make a case against AD being all NBA, particularly at a time where you don't have to go specific by centers and some of the guys who are going to be eliminated from not having hit the 65 game threshold. I think it is honestly damn near impossible not to include Anthony Davis.
I agree.
Where I think LeBron is tricky, and for what it's worth, I was on 710 ESPN on the Mason and Ireland show earlier today, sitting in for Mace, and we did an exercise in our, you know, I don't have a vote on this, but our all NBA teams. And my fake ballot, I had AD second team, LeBron third. LeBron, I thought, was maybe not an absolute lock for third team, but pretty close. I didn't really debate that hard putting him in there. What I think is complicated with LeBron is he obviously produces, and especially since the post All-Star break, he's really cranked up, I think, his effort for the most part on both sides of the floor, his production. I think he's really started to ramp himself up. But the pre-All-Star break version of LeBron, there is some pacing himself going on. Like, that is a real thing that may be understandable and it may be necessary, but it still becomes something that has to be offset. And it's particularly on the defensive end. And when you don't have Jared Vanderbilt, whose absence, I will beat this drum forever, has been massively important for this team and detrimental, you start getting into lineups that have 2- defenders or neutral-ish defenders in D'Lo and Reaves, and then what's going on with LeBron, and then depending on the matchup, either, you know, Rui can be good in certain matchups, can be problematic in others. You know, Reddish was doing okay at times, but, you know, you give up a lot of offense. Taurean Prince is okay in certain defensive matchups, but he's too small, a lot of small forward. Like, you start getting into a place where those elements from LeBron, and I think also sometimes the energy cues that the team will take from him because he's a tone setter, I think those become sometimes more complicated than people look at when they just say, well, LeBron and AD have been healthy, what's the problem? I think it's more complicated than that. For sure. And I think that, to me, when I look at the early, you know, the parts where he was pacing himself, I would point out a couple of things. The first thing I would point out is that I know this is not news to anyone that LeBron is 39, but I think because he's so good still, we almost forget like where the reason he's so good is because he is a savant at managing his energy and his body, and he knows exactly what he needs to do and when and times. And that was like one of, to me, the most impressive things about the 2020 championship was not just for LeBron, but for everyone in the league. Like, their rhythm of when they ramp up, when they're supposed to be at their peak, was completely upended and disrupted. Yeah. They were playing the NBA finals in like October, I believe. So, that was an incredible feat for someone like LeBron, who's so regimented, he ramps up at
a certain, L curve or whatever over the course of the season for a purpose so that he can be at his absolute peak in the playoffs. And I don't think that's new. But I do think it's like all the more relevant now that he's older and he needs to conserve that energy, especially because we watched last season when they basically had to play like it was the playoffs for 3 straight months to get into the play-in and then get as far as the Western Conference Finals. I really think a huge factor of why that Denver series was a sweep was because LeBron was not 100%. He probably wasn't even 70%. He was really hampered with that leg injury
that he had to consider surgery.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think if he had been able to ease into it a little bit more, I don't know what would have happened in that series. I mean, to me, Denver was the team of destiny last year. I don't think anyone was beating them from either conference, but I do feel like the results of that Western Conference to me are so much related to LeBron James' health and condition, and no one knows that better than LeBron. So he wasn't going to come into this year like firing on all cylinders from the beginning. The other factor that I think people are forgetting, because the year somehow feels so short and so long at the same time, we don't really know. This was our first time doing the in-season tournament, and we won't know for a couple years like whether that was an objective success and also what kind of impact that has on the winning team. But you are watching both the Pacers and the Lakers deal with, like, there was a huge letdown after that. And I think the teams that really went for it ended up kind of getting punished karmically for that. It felt like, I just don't know. I don't think it's human nature to like ramp up energetically, physically, like to win something that early in the season and then still have like 60 games left before the playoffs. And I think a lot of this Lakers team, a lot of the losses that put them in the position that they're in now came immediately after the in-season tournament when they were on that losing streak, which to me was completely predictable after how much energy they expended to win that. And you look at the standings in the West, I mean, what are the Lakers still, like 6 games above 500, something like that? If they're in the 9 seed, I mean, that's preposterous. It's like so incredibly competitive in the West. And you look at those, like, say 6 games, like, what are they like? I think are they like 5 games back?
They're currently 5 games above 500 and the 9 seed. Yeah, I mean, it is.
But like, say, what is the record of the 4 seed, for example?
The 4 seed is the Clippers. They are 17 games above 500.
Okay, so that's like
42 and 25.
Okay, so the Lakers are like what, roughly 6 or 7 games behind them? More than that?
Yeah, 5. Well,
in the loss
column versus the win column, but they are 7 games behind the Clippers.
Okay, so if you think about, they're 7 games behind, being out of the play-in, home court advantage essentially in the playoffs. Right. You think about December, that losing streak they went on after the in-season tournament, when they were kind of like, it seems like just exhausted from that experience. That puts them from the 9 seed to the 4 seed, and then we're having a completely different conversation. No one's batting an eyelash at 2 players from a 4 seed in the Western Conference being all NBA. To me, right, I think the in-season tournament was a massive factor. It's not the only factor, but I haven't heard it mentioned in discussions at all. And I find that kind of fascinating, because you're watching basically the same thing happen to the Pacers. I mean, Halliburton ended up getting hurt. Benedict Mathurin is now out for the season. So I don't know. I liked the in-season tournament. I think it was great that it brought more interest to the earlier part of the season, and it was super fun. And like, selfishly, I got to go to Vegas and report on it. And I love going to Vegas in December. I mean, who doesn't? But I don't know if we fully have understood the scope of what the effect that's going to have, especially on these extremely regimented athletes that ramp up at a very specific pace at a very specific time.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be something the league looks into as they continue doing this, because it's here to stay. Real quick, tell people where to find your music. How do they listen to Tiny Deaths?
It's on Spotify, Apple Music, like anywhere you stream music. And also, if you do follow me on Twitter, like, check out my socials after this. I have links to it in all of my bios.
And how would you describe the music?
I would say it's like dreamy, ethereal pop music. Like, it's good. It's good, like, if you're driving on the highway and you are, it's like pretending you're in a movie. Music. That's how I like to describe it.
All right. She is Claire Delon. You can follow her on Twitter at ClaireMPLS. You can read her work covering the NBA at The Guardian. And as we just discussed, you can listen to her music under Tiny Deaths. Appreciate the time as always, Claire. This was fun. And Brian will be back on Wednesday. Claire, thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. That was awesome.
And we will see everybody on Wednesday.